Lancaster Online with my colleagues Mike Gross and Jeff Reinhart. Another LNP Lancaster Online Sports Roundtable that we record here every Thursday as I have stuff falling as I intro us. We thought it'd be timely, instead of having a guest on this week, just to have us as colleagues, the sports department, because there's a lot of moving parts here. Mike's on Penn State. I've been reporting a lot on the conferences with the 5 colleges here in the county. Jeff has a big story coming up on the state of high school sports this weekend. Story coming out. So we thought we'd hit on all those topics, kind of a state of fall sports per se, and just kind of give you guys an idea of what the heck is going on, at least what we're hearing. With that, as I say this, earlier today, Penn State, a report came out from State College today that a Penn State student athlete, we don't know who, has a positive case of the coronavirus. And I guess we could start there if Mike could shed a little bit light on that.
Yeah, well, first of all, I would say this was inevitable. I mean, with as many athletes as they have up there, they started a staggered return to campus for voluntary workouts on June 8th with 75 football players. And this is they've done, I would venture to say, 300 tests by this point, maybe more than that. And this is the first positive test, which I think is pretty remarkable. I think that's actually surprising. Now, understand, this is just everybody's being tested. Nobody's complaining of symptoms and therefore being tested. It's not like that. Everybody's being tested, and they're young. It's relatively young, healthy people, so we wouldn't expect a huge number, but we would expect some. I mean, we've heard the Clemson football team, for example, had a couple of dozen. The Texas football team had a couple dozen. I mean, most of these major schools have had many positive tests, so it's kind of remarkable that Penn State hasn't. We don't know if it was a football player. We had a Zoom call today with Ellis Brooks, linebacker for Penn State, and he certainly didn't seem. He's a very bright, articulate, thoughtful kid, and he didn't seem concerned about it. And I didn't get the sense that I don't know. Maybe I'm reading too much in, but I didn't think that it was a football player based on the way he talked. Maybe it is, maybe it isn't. I don't know. A little bit interesting from a journalism standpoint. The story was broken by WPSU, which is a campus TV radio station, which is affiliated with NPR, but I think it's student run. And they saw a report of a positive test from the State Department of Education. I mean, for the State Department of Health, not education, State Department of Health, and it was from the zip code that could only be on campus. So they kind of, as I understand it, they kind of put two and two together and figured it had to be an athlete because the regular students aren't on campus yet. And then Penn State University pretty quickly came out and issued a statement, kind of confirming that it was an athlete. I thought that was kind of interesting the way it played out, just from a sort of inside baseball thing for journalists. But other than that, whoever the person is will quarantine for 2 weeks. And that's about all there is to this. I think this was inevitable that they were going to have some.
Mike, we already know the Big Ten Conference, at least football-wise, is going to a conference-only schedule this fall. That would be Penn State's first game would be September 26th against Northwestern. Then, for those who are unfamiliar, when are they starting practices? Have they started practices? What is that going to look like in this kind of coronavirus world?
I think most of the NCAA normal calendar is kind of thrown out. Ellis Brooks said today that they're about to start doing walkthroughs, which means they've gone beyond the sort of voluntary conditioning type workout stage to real football stuff. I think the actual formal start date for practice is the same as it always was. It's usually around August 12th, August 13th, somewhere in there. That's when they actually start practicing. I don't think that has changed, but I think they're probably going to be doing some kind of workout in the couple of weeks leading up to that, which would not have been the case in the past.
And kind of along those lines, at least for me today, the last remaining school in the county, Thaddeus Stevens College, that had yet to announce anything in regards to fall sports came out today and said they're not playing fall sports this fall, or they're not playing fall sports at all this calendar year. It's still TBD what they're going to do with their winter sports. If I had an inkling, if I had to guess and put my money on it, I'd say they push it back to January, and who knows what happens beyond that. Along those lines, just in the last 2 weeks, the Centennial Conference, of which F&M is a part, has suspended their fall sports with the addendum there saying that they're going to meet. Conference presidents will meet sometime late September to see if it would be possible at that point to, I don't know, play an abbreviated fall schedule kind of later in the year. The only exception to that is football. Centennial Conference not playing football at all this calendar year. There's an option on the table for them to play that in the spring of 2021. And then, let's see, going down the list here, Northeast Athletic Conference, of which Lancaster Bible College is a member. They're not playing fall sports at all this calendar year. It's still TBD what they're doing with their winter sports, and there's an option on the table to push fall sports to spring. The Landmark Conference, of which Elizabethtown College is a member, if I remember correctly. See, there's 8 million things. I want to make sure that I have this correct. They've suspended fall sports preseason activities indefinitely, and will play a conference-only schedule this fall, which I think is a third or fourth week in September that will start for them. And then I believe finally the only one I'm missing here is the PSAC, Pennsylvania State Athletic Conference, of which Millersville is a member. Their conference is not playing any sports fall or winter at all in the calendar year of 2020. And it's kind of TBD what they're going to do as far as January 2021. It sounds like they're going to meet closer to that time and figure out what they're going to do with their winter and spring sports and what have you. So a lot of moving parts here. And it's crazy to think. And I hope people kind of get an idea that, keep in mind the idea that college sports is different from high school sports. I think Lancaster Bible College athletic director Pete Beers kind of made a good point of these, in colleges anyway, these student athletes are coming from all across the country, all across the world. And then once you get them on campus, they're packed tight in buses, sometimes traveling on planes, and it's just not going to be feasible for them. Whereas high school sports kind of on the local level seems a bit more doable at this point. With that, Mr. Reinhardt, if you could kind of enlighten us to that. You've been putting together a story the last week or two, talking to a lot of folks to see what the heck is going to happen this fall.
Yeah, grab a Sunday News this week. A nice in-depth kind of state of the LL and where they're at. Got to talk to Ron Kennedy, the executive director of the league, Rich Hinnenkamp, the soccer chairperson, Anthony Hall at Solanco, the field hockey chairperson. Kind of in the same vein as Penn State, we've had, one school here kind of self-report a COVID test. Lampeter Strasburg, a coach tested positive. We think there's another school. I guess we really can't say, but we think there's another school that might have a test that was positive, or they're waiting on results. This whole thing is just tricky, but the PIAA, like they did in the spring when they just kind of put everything on hold, they're kind of doing the same thing here with the fall. They're giving it absolutely every chance to get played,
which is what they should do.
Probably,
in my opinion. I mean, that's what they should do. I do think it's interesting. I'm not one of these journalists that is constantly railing against college sports for being money grubbing, but I think it's kind of interesting that the colleges that really don't make any money from sports at all have been so quick and decisive about shutting it down, whereas the ones who do, less so.
Sure. No, but the PIAA, and John, you covered this meeting last week. Dr. Lombardi, who was gracious to come on with us a couple of weeks ago, came out and said, August 17th, first day of practice, be ready to go. So the thing that I've been covering here, it just seems like for weeks, has been this health and safety plan, getting the kids back on campus safely. I've been to a couple football workouts. There's masks on sometimes there's not. There's social distancing sometimes there's not. I do see things getting sanitized, workout equipment, footballs, etc. So that's nice to see. So everybody is just kind of in that mode right now. Kids are allowed back out, excited to be out. But at the couple of workouts that I've been to, I hear, Reinhardt, what do you think? Week 1, are we playing? And my response to all those questions usually is, look, be happy that the PIAA is letting you come out right now in the middle of the summer in the blazing heat and work out, because this could all end next Thursday. Nobody knows. So enjoy the time you get now, because you don't know when it's going to end.
Nobody has the scoop. There is no scoop. I mean, everybody's asking us, and they're kind of, it's just kind of something to talk about kind of thing. But nobody knows. I mean, when the governor and the State Department of Health decide something, the PIAA will, they'll respond to that. Let me ask you guys if you've observed something. This is what I've heard from other people, journalists and stuff. That if you show up real early for something, they're not really observing the masks and the social distancing. If you show up before they expect you to, there's been some examples of that I've heard.
Well, both places, I was at Hempfield and I was at Lancaster Catholic. I can name drop those because I wrote about both. Both places, when I arrived, especially at Catholic, the trainers were right there, and I had to stand in a line, social distanced, and they took my temperature right on my head, and it was normal. And they said you can go in. The whole time I was there, I had a mask on. During the interviews, I had a mask on. I've always tried to be careful here, probably overly careful since March. I'm taking this really seriously, as everybody should. I was kind of surprised at the lack of masks sometimes, and I'm not busting on people or calling them out, but I guess according to these rules, you can have 25 people on a field or in a gym, and they don't have to have masks on. I'm just so used to seeing masks on people now that when I don't see them, I get a little like, oh, put a mask on.
Yeah, I think we all do. Yeah,
we all do. So no, I can tell from just a couple of places that I've been out to that they're following the rules. And they have to.
I certainly don't want to suggest that most people aren't taking this very seriously. I don't want to suggest that at all.
Sure, but the kids seemed excited. They were all happy to be back out with their friends, and hooting and hollering and laughing and carrying on, and running past patterns again. I mean, they were legitimately happy.
And what they're doing right now, in any other year, would kind of be thought of as drudgery. And people would be blowing it off to go to the shore and stuff. You know what I mean? I mean, not everybody, but generally speaking, this is like the really grunt work of high school sports. What's going on right now? But in this context, people are happy for it.
Now, John, I'm going to bring weird that John, I had a question for you. That there's going to be 0 college sports in Lancaster County this fall. Have you wrapped your head around that at all?
And especially, and that's the thing too, because I grew up going to Millersville football games, went to some F&M games back in the day, and that's mainly because of football. And yeah, it's going to be strange. And even Thaddeus Stevens, there's usually 3/4 of their roster are like LL League guys, and now that opportunity is taken away. Who knows if they play in the spring? So that's certainly going to be weird. I did want to bring up with you guys, because I think this is going to be pertinent as we move forward here in the next month or two, that thread of tweets that former Lancaster Catholic, former Penn Manor football coach Todd Mealy sent out about a week ago, just in regards to, okay, what happens if a player tests positive? Does that player go home for 14 days and the rest of the team keeps going? What happens if there's a football game on a Friday and then a player tests positive on a Saturday? Does both teams shut it down for 2 weeks? Do they forfeit losses? Do they plow forward? And not only that, I think we were already starting to see, as far as holding schools accountable, to actually report these tests, because it's not like college and pro sports where students or athletes are showing up and getting a COVID test. They're not being tested. They'll get tested if they feel symptoms. So it's not like the only way we're going to hear about is if maybe a positive COVID test comes out and maybe a school discloses, maybe they don't. So there's just a lot of moving parts that we don't know about. And Jeff, I'm curious if you've asked those questions to coaches and athletic directors and what they're telling you.
I did. Let me preface it with this. When I had to pick up the phone 2 weeks ago and call LS, I hated like heck doing it. I was doing my job, and I called somebody, we had heard it's in the football program. I called somebody in the football program, and I said, I hate to ask you this, but we're hearing that you had a positive test, and I'm just doing my job, and don't hate me. And I said, this is the first time that we as sports writer guys have to ask these questions. I mean, and it was tough to have to do. We ended up getting our answers, and everybody, LS responded and all that stuff. But anyway, that was really difficult. Ron Kennedy said it best to me, point blank, and the quotes are in the Sunday piece. Right now, the only rules that the high school kids are following are the health and safety plans for the summer. There are no rules yet for what happens when we start playing and somebody tests positive. Kennedy told me point blank that will come from a higher authority, guessing the government, guessing CDC. He said that will be a whole new set of guidelines. What happens if a kid on Elko tests positive in a game against Northern Lebanon? Do all those kids have to get tested? Do they have to forfeit? Can you add a game? Nobody knows. So that will be I think his quote was, "We will cross that bridge when we get to it." So,
okay.
Story short, to answer your question, nobody knows yet. Hinenkamp, Hall,
Like Catholic athletic director.
Yes, they all said to me on the record, unsolicited, Jeff, we don't even know what school's going to look like yet. We don't know if our kids are going to be in the hallways. We don't know if they're going to be homeschooled. If they're homeschooled, are they going to let them on campus to practice, to play? We have no idea. So we can't tell you right now if Johnny tests positive on a Tuesday soccer game, what's going to happen after that? Nobody knows yet.
Well, it's not just, but it's not just that nobody knows. It's that there's no imaginable answer to this.
Sure.
These scenarios that John raised a minute ago, it's not just that nobody knows. It's that there's no good way to do it. There's no possible good answer to this.
No.
I think we're in crazy land until there's a vaccine or until there's a solid treatment for this virus. I think we're in Looney Tunes land.
That's what I've been telling everybody that I come in contact with. I will not feel 110% safe until somebody sticks a needle in my arm.
If they in the scenario where a player, there's a football game on Friday and a player tests positive on Saturday, it's probably an extreme reaction to shut everybody down on both teams. That's probably an extreme reaction, but I guess better safe than sorry. Yeah.
And they're kids. They're kids. This isn't Juan Soto, millionaire MLB player guys who can get tests like that. I don't know how high school kids at Pequay Valley are going to be able to get tested and know like the next day who has it and who doesn't. No.
And I'll speak for the three of us. We all want sports to happen just as much as everybody else too.
Oh, of course.
But I want to do it safely, of course.
Gang, our lives right here. You're looking at us. Our lives revolve around your school calendar and covering your kids and being in your stadiums and in your gyms. I mean, this is our livelihood. And we're starting in on our previews this week with fingers crossed that, we're sitting at a football game.
Yeah, we're gonna start doing what we do this time of year. That reminds me of another thing to think about here, which is how many people are full-time employees of schools because of sports. I mean, all of these colleges have a sports information staff
for each sport.
What are they going to do? What are they going to do in September and October?
No
Maybe
idea.
Work for us.
Maybe.
But
I thought we did pretty good in the spring. I thought we found good stuff to report and write about, and there was a lot of good human interest angle stories. And there will be stories to write if the fall stuff doesn't get played. But man, we want to be at a game.
Yeah, but I just mean like they're paying a sports information director a full-time salary when there will be no sports information.
Yeah,
right.
True.
And not only that, there's usually I'm working on a story about this too, as far as summer camps and fall camps that colleges hold to not only help younger student athletes develop with their sports abilities, but also those are revenue drivers that for D2 and D3 college sports programs help kind of pay the bills for jerseys and travel and food and whatnot. Now those are being taken away. So where's that money going to be made up at? And that's kind of TBD. But
that's in like Division II, that's the difference between having scholarships and not having scholarships.
Right.
Exactly.
In a lot of cases, what you just described. Yeah.
Any last parting words from either of you guys?
Check Sunday News, good in-depth story with a sidebar about a new coach at Warwick who gets her first dream job, head coaching job, and in the middle of a pandemic. So keep an eye out for that. Fingers crossed from all of us, gang. Stay healthy out there. That's my final comment. Stay healthy, please. Wear a mask, and we hope to see you in a stadium or a gym soon.
Really. Ditto.
right.
Peace.
Rock and roll, guys. Have a good week, and we'll catch you guys next week.
Thanks.